I went into the toilets, pretended I was going in for a wee, took a razor blade in with me, and I wasn't intending to cut myself hard, but I gashed that arm really hard. I gashed the word scum into it. And I was just suddenly aware that it was excruciatingly painful on that occasion, because often it had been scratches. And suddenly I was aware that these big holes were opening up in my arm, and it was like panic, but I needed to write this word, and I couldn't stop doing it. My earliest clear memories of anything was growing up in Derby in the Isle of Man, and it's an absolute hole. I remember lying awake at night listening to the drain pipe rattling in the winds. The wind swept right across the place. It was like very desolate, very bleak. I felt very lonely. I was a complete misfit at school. I was just ostracised. I was cut off from everybody else in my own age group. I was a little freak that was almost autistically shy. I was quite fat, plain, specky, swatty. I just want to get home and hide in my bedroom, hide away from the rest of the world. My school years, people say your school years are the best years of your life. They were my worst. But what I would do as a child would be bite myself. Sometimes I'd dig my fingernails into myself, but quite often I'd scream hysterically if I was upset, and often I'd run away. I used to fantasise a lot about aeroplanes and about travelling places. The idea of escape from the Isle of Man seemed so important back then. But I just felt the urge building up inside me to go and sort of run down the street, and we live quite near the sea, so to run down the Iron Pier at like 100 miles an hour and just like leap off the end going, yeah! You know, escape. I just wanted out so much. I needed some kind of release. I'd often lash out, and it would be at the wrong person. It would be, you know, perhaps my mum, I mean, my poor mum. It would be boyfriends, people who were very, very close to me who didn't deserve it sometimes. It was a long time before I started cutting myself where I realised violence, it was causing far more problems than it was solving. I felt ashamed of myself. It was making life very difficult. And I would say it's about 5 years ago that I got the violence almost under control to the point where basically I haven't been violent since. I will sit and I will seethe quietly, but I won't attack someone because that is just not me anymore. I could not do that. I would rather just bottle it up inside, and if it gets too much, I'll cut myself. The first time I cut myself, I just got an awful letter that day. It was really distressing. It was a kick in the teeth. I just didn't know what to do at all. I tried drinking and I just felt sick. I couldn't relieve my feelings. So I ran around the house and I got a compass and tried scratching myself with that. It wouldn't work. Got the kitchen knife, wouldn't work. Fingernails, I just tried everything to scratch myself with. I just desperately needed to relieve this feeling. In the end, I scraped around the toolbox and found a Stanley knife, and I was so relieved that cut. And it didn't get rid of the feeling, but I just felt like I was absolute garbage, absolute scum because of this letter I got, and it seemed just the right thing to do to cut myself. I always like to know why people are doing things. A subject like self-abuse is very much a taboo. A lot of people are secretive about it. They can't talk about it. Many of the people I go to see bands with cut themselves, and I think I understand what's going on for us. But there are lots of people out there, and I wanted to discover more, to talk to different sorts of people who self-harm. On the surface I can come to terms with myself, and underneath I know I'm scum. And that's like one of the other words down here. It's scum, reject, rejected, used, vile. attention seeker. Now that is just such a common misconception about self-abuse, self-harm, that people are just doing it for the outer world, look at me, I'm in pain, I want you to make a fuss of me, and that is simply not true in so many cases.
So there's that. What's the other things people come up with? You know, maybe that you're...
Selfish.
It shows how much impact the words that we use have on people that self-harm. Because if you've got something like this up, for example, or time waster, or whatever it might be, then what does that say? And in the context of people working in hospitals or institutions, it's like, well, just try and, all right, that's what you believe, but let's try and look at something different. Let's see whether or not it's possible to look at self-harm in a different way.
Yeah. Often I don't care who sees my scars, but when they're new, when I've just done them, I always want to put a bandage on them, or sleeves over, particularly a bandage, just hide them, because it makes me feel too vulnerable to show the scars then. It makes me feel, this is my open, naked pain on display. I have to hide it then. Whereas I don't, now they're quite old, so I don't care really.
Do you really not care?
Not at the moment, no. Whereas a few days ago, I was like, the only way I could go out on the town, it's like, put bandage round. If I hadn't had the bandage, I'd have just had to crawl into a corner and hide.
Smile.
When did you actually start self-mutilating?
Actual office had such a bad atmosphere, people didn't get on. There were no windows in it, and life just seemed to be working like that, and no other prospects. And then maybe getting married, maybe having children, and it just didn't have much meaning for me. And these thoughts just kept going round and round and round. And I happened just to be sat by a piece of glass, and I sort of snapped and just, you know, went like that.
Can you remember what it felt like?
I think it was a relief, actually, in some ways. But there was one case when I was in hospital for depression. You don't get admitted for cutting because that's not serious enough. And they did this behaviour plan, whereby if I talked about self-harm, they'd remove my Walkman, or something like that. And if I could explain myself and express why I was doing it, I could get my Walkman back. And then if there was actual self-harm, they'd take my wardrobe away along the corridors. And what I did do was lock myself in the toilet with micropore, and I had a blade hidden in the toilet. And I'd cut my legs, and it would just relieve the tension of just being in that environment. I used to think I'd never ever do it again, but now I'm beginning to think it's a pattern of my life, and that I've done it so many times. It's inevitably going to happen again, because I haven't actually dealt with what happened in the first place.
I don't feel I can talk about this bit. It's painful, you know. It's a feeling. When I get love, I feel I don't deserve it, and when I don't get love, I can't cope. There's a Manics lyric, self-disgust is self-obsession. And it's true, you know. I do become very self-obsessed, and I loathe that.